got something. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's going on, everyone from YouTube? Thank you for joining us for another Bros Talking Soccer podcast. On today's podcast, I am joined by Boyce, James, and Jared from Who Kicked the Corner Flag podcast. Let's start with Boyce. Hello.
Hello. How are you this evening, I suppose?
I am doing fantastic. So there's Boyce. It's the first time we're having three on, so I'm going to do my best to corral or keep this thing flowing. James, how are you? Hello.
I'm doing good. How are you, bud?
All right, doing well. And then finally, Jared, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. Thank you very much. People that are tuning in on YouTube, say hello. Interact with us as we go along here. We would love to hear from you. I have the comments feature up here, so chat with us. Any questions for the guys, let me know. If you're watching in the future, feel free to leave a comment, and I can relay the messages and all of that. I think with that, I think we're ready to jump into the podcast. Guys, any last questions or anything like that?
I'm good. We'll do. Yeah. I'm
All
good.
right. Let's go.
So
All
nervous.
Right. I'm excited. I'm excited to have you guys on. You guys are a lot of fun. I love listening to your podcast. I'd like to welcome on Boyce, Jared, and James from the Who Kicked the Corner Flag podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to Bros Talking Soccer. Boyce, hello. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. James, hello. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. And Jared, hello and welcome. How are you doing?
What's he drinking?
I'm doing great.
I assume it's orange juice.
Yeah. It looks delicious, whatever it is. So I'll start with, let's get to know you guys a little bit more. Absolutely love your podcast. You guys have so much personality. So I want to get to know you guys a little bit more. So why don't we start with Boyce? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you live now, and how you got into soccer?
Yeah, I grew up in southeastern Kansas. Not much soccer there. We played with shin guards until I was about 6 or 7 years old. And then I didn't pick up a soccer ball again until law school when we had an indoor co-ed team. Moved back to Kansas City in 2010. Got tired of watching Arsenal matches on my TV by myself in my house. Started inviting people over. And then slowly but surely in 2013, I started KC Gunners, which is the Arsenal America branch in Kansas City that watches soccer matches at Johnny's Taverns. And we've been doing that for almost 6 years now.
Awesome. Yeah. And I definitely want to talk more about that later on. But James, can you tell us, where you're from? I think you're from a different place than maybe these guys, but where are you from and how'd you get into soccer?
Yeah, so from England, born and raised there. I actually come from a county called Hertfordshire, which is where Watford play, funny enough. Obviously a Spurs fan. Got my T-shirt on today just to prove it. You can see that. There you go. Yeah, moved here in, there it is, Jared. Love it. Moved here in 2011. Went to University of Central Missouri on exchange and then did a master's. Got into soccer, obviously played it since I was maybe 6, I think is when I started. Obviously you play a lot of it when you're in school, but haven't played a little bit in a while, actually. I'll admit that, but obviously still love it. Love the Premier League. That's kind of me.
All right, awesome. And Jared, finally, how'd you get into sport of soccer? Where are you from?
I was actually born in Kansas City, and then my dad joined the Navy, so I've lived a bit of everywhere. And so I've been playing soccer my whole life, and then tried to play college ball. Then just those guys are really good, man. Let me tell you. So I played club ball and second team stuff, and then came back to Kansas City for law school, and been a Spurs supporter. You like anything, you look around, you pick a team. I was a big fan of Ledley King, and kind of went from there. I kind of choose a player that is everything you aren't, which is strong on the ball and good in possession, and I am neither. But and I head up the KC Spurs, and we're the official sports group branch of Tottenham Hotspur here in Kansas City. Actually, inherited the group from a fellow, Nathan Wells, and we were a bit nomadic. We were kind of bouncing around bars and things like that here in Kansas City. And just by kind of chance, I had a buddy who was a manager of a bar, gave us a little more stable space. And Nathan and his wife had a couple of kids. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to run this thing?" And that was about, what do you say, James? About 3 years ago now.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And now we've got we just celebrated a 1-year anniversary in Strange Days Brewery, our new little brewery home down in River Market here in Kansas City. And it's exploded to just something that is so much fun.
And I want everybody to know Jared's actually just being modest. He is world class at getting into fights with opposing goalkeepers at co-ed indoor on Saturday mornings. He could go into the Premier League for that alone, I think. He's the Troy Deeney of fighting with goalkeepers on the
There's
opposition team.
Borghini drop. There it is. Right there.
That is the nicest way somebody has ever called me fat. That is so great.
I love it. I feel like every co-ed team needs one of those players. So, yeah, I can totally relate to that. So you guys are all based in the city in Kansas City. So how did you, so it's interesting. You got two Spurs fans and an Arsenal fan decided to start a podcast, which I love the dynamic on the podcast. It's fantastic. How did you guys all meet? And then what's the origin story with the podcast? So why don't we start with James? What's it from your perspective?
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. So I think
it's his brainchild. Yeah.
Jared and I are just along for the ride.
There you go. Yeah, I guess it started. Jared and I were talking in a bar one time about doing a Spurs podcast and kind of kicking the idea around about that. And I guess from that point, we kind of wanted to stretch it out a little bit more. There were already a lot of Spurs podcasts floating around. So we kind of thought it might be fun to kind of get in an extra person who has a different perspective, not just Spurs. And so that's when Boyce jumped on, and we kind of made it more of a Premier League kind of podcast at that point, but we wanted to put a little bit more of a spin on it. So we thought, want to make it a quiz show. So we kind of have the avenue where the guys can get to talk about, the different fixtures from the weekend's action, but kind of tie in some, stat questions, some kind of, player profile questions, kind of mix it up a little bit. And that kind of gives it its unique value, kind of gives it it's what it is, So we kind of do it week in, week out. We've been doing it now for we've almost finished our second season now, so we're still going strong. That's kind of how it came together.
Very cool. So it sounds like you and Jared already knew each other. Mm-hmm. How does Boyce come into the picture? Did you guys know each other already, or did you just find? You said we got to find an Arsenal supporter. So
I think I've actually known Jared longer than James has. Is that right, Jared? I think so. Jared and I have played on the same indoor team called the Michael Bolton Wanderers for going on, I think, 6 or 7 years now. And you laugh at that. We have gotten multiple social media shout outs from Michael Bolton over the course of our existence to congratulate us on winning indoor co-ed championships on Saturday mornings. So one day he's going to come sing the national anthem at the soccer dome.
Oh, man.
That's what we're waiting on. Yeah, I know Boyce. Actually, I met Boyce through my wife 7 years ago. And then I jumped on playing with the Fighting Michael Bolton Wanderers, who actually technically are in a higher position now than the actual Bolton Wanderers, relatively in their competitions. But and then I met James through the supporters group, and that's 100% right. And James, the scripts and everything that James puts in, it's amazing. He writes our questions and goes and pulls all the trivia. And if you're a listener to our podcast, fools us pretty often, especially the rumor mill. We think there's the wackiest stuff.
I hate the rumor mill.
It's not true. We're both very bad at it.
It's truly awful. I think Jared and I went 0 for a couple of weeks ago, which is just awful. And it's,
By
true
the way,
or false.
I'm not actually keeping this stat. I'm going to start. Almost all of our guests nail rumor mill, and almost like just with this unequivocal confidence. Like, no, that is false. And you hear like the clicking of me and Boyce Googling, like, well, they've answered. Is that true? They're always right.
I was like, I have no idea. I feel like we had a guest
right.
A couple of weeks ago. We had somebody that had gone out and actually done transfer related research ahead of the podcast. And that felt a little like cheating.
I think that was Drew Pells. Give him a shout out, because he did it.
We don't prepare by any stretch of the imagination that much.
I love it. It makes it more interesting. So we touched on Jared there, how he became a fan through Ledley King, sort of led him into his fandom. Let's go Boyce. So how'd you become a supporter of Arsenal?
It was back in 2010 during the World Cup. Actually, the U.S. played the Czech Republic, I believe, at that point, and Thomas Rosicky was on that squad. And I know that my fellow American fans will remember that he scored an absolute just cracker against us in the qualification rounds. And I remember at that time I was really looking for a Premier League team, trying to figure out where I wanted to support and who I wanted to support, and kind of followed him and realized he was transferring to Arsenal that year. So followed, and then of course all the players that you love slowly but surely fall away, or end up like Benedict Arnold, like Cesc Fabregas. But you kind of trace them, you follow them. These days, I wasn't around for the Henry Bergkamp teams in the early 2000s, but these days I still strongly loved Santi Cazorla, and may actually be making a trip in May to Getafe to go see his last match for Villarreal this year. Some allegiances die hard. I still love you, Olivier Giroud.
I'm a huge Giroud fan as well. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the world. So we've talked about that multiple times on the podcast. James, being from Hertfordshire, how'd you end up as a Spurs supporter?
Through my dad mainly. He's a diehard Spurs fan and still is. And he kind of converted me over. Honest truth, I did actually start following Watford for a little bit before I started following Spurs. But he was the one that kind of taught me over. I wanted more of that kind of father-son relationship with him. And that's kind of how it's been ever since. Been a supporter since 2006, 7, around that time. It's been a while.
So James, did today hurt you even worse?
Maybe just a little. I mean, part of me wanted Watford to just do something, but I think, yeah.
Part of you? All of you, my friend.
Yeah, maybe I'm being modest.
Troy Deeney did something. It just wasn't the right
red
thing.
card worthy. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about that maybe.
Fine with it. Who cares? By the way, Mr. Rose is a great social media follow. By the way, I like James will often like live chat with his dad during the matches at our watches, and an apoplectic John Rose is my favorite John Rose. It's so great.
Still trying to get him over here. We'll get him here. But anyway, to answer, I can't remember what your question was. Oh, how did I become a Spurs fan? Yeah, through my dad. Obviously, followed them ever since. It's obviously a roller coaster of emotions if you're a Spurs fan.
Keeps things interesting. And for anyone curious, we have everybody's who's on the podcast today. We have their Twitter accounts linked in the video description and podcast show notes. So make sure to go follow them all, as well as the Who Kicked the Corner Flag podcast. They're all great follows. Jared, anything else you wanted to add beyond Ledley King getting you into Spurs?
No, I just really wanted a tortured, miserable existence. I was actually enjoying my life far too much, and decided, you know what? I just want routine and abject just disappointment. So here I am. But when you start to look at some of these clubs and all of that, I mean, and it's no knock on some of the big four and things like that. There was such a great history. And I love the area of White Hart. It's a very working class town and all of that. Again, that is not to say that anybody who follows Chelsea absolutely sucks. I mean, they do, but
just don't get on a train with them.
Oh man, ain't that the truth? Good grief. But it was one of those things where my mind was probably made up, but more a Lashin club, and then you just start following a club, start to know everything about him, and then here you are with the fun teal and white sweatshirt.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. So anyone just listening to the podcast, make sure to check out the YouTube video for all these guys rocking great gear and different merch. So make sure to check it out. Jared, you touched on this a little bit earlier, how you came to be leader of the supporters club. So I guess in addition to what you already touched on with how you became a leader, what's involved with kind of being at the top of the supporters club?
So first and foremost is kind of communication, as I call it with James, is the mothership. Keeping track on things. For instance, right now, Tottenham Hotspur, they're looking for video submissions for different charitable works that all the individual supporters.
Oh, I think we lost Jared.
I think we.
Oh,
yeah. I think we may have lost Jared, so maybe we'll come back to that one. Hopefully we get him back soon. Boyce, maybe can you talk about it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, beyond dealing with the mothership, it's amazing all the little intricacies that go into things. I'm very fortunate to have Brent Anderson, who's basically the branch manager of KC Gooners. He does all of our graphic work, so T-shirts, stickers, scarves. All of those sorts of things are all the brainchild of Brent, kind of working in tandem for ideas of what we're trying to do. But the level of clearance, I love Arsenal America, but the level of clearance in terms of getting logos past them whenever we're updating things or trying to get the website updated and organized. But I think above and beyond Jared's point, one of the key roles is just to be kind of a cheerleader. I mean, you're doing it through social media, but sometimes we're getting people up at 6:45 in the morning. We're getting people up incredibly early, and we're trying to get them to the bar. And your job, I think, as a branch manager is to do that. But I will say, as difficult as it can be in certain circumstances, it's also really fulfilling. We had, I think something like 250 people at our pub for the 2015 FA Cup final when we beat Villa 4-0. It put me into contact in 2013 with a group of individuals in London that have become my connection point and kind of like a subsidiary family that I go over there, that Brent and I try and visit at least once or twice a year. So it's been pretty incredible. It can just be frustrating. There were times early on, and I don't know if Jared can attest to this as well, where it was like Brent and I at the bar by ourselves watching Arsenal play West Brom in the morning, eating donuts, like eating a whole dozen donuts by ourselves, being sad that nobody else was there. And especially at the down times during the Wenger era, you know, things got pretty bad from an attendance standpoint, because I think people were just frustrated. And even if you have a really positive environment, when things for the club start to go awry, it can be difficult to get people out of their beds and get them motivated to come hang out and drink beer in the morning.
Yeah, Jared, I think we have you back here. So
I think I cut out.
All right.
But no, I was going to say I was describing one of the efforts of Tottenham Hotspur, trying to get a sense of the charitable works of, you know, the different supporters groups and stuff like that. And I will, you know, acknowledge that Boyce has done a great job. Arsenal America, they also have a annual fundraiser, you know, kind of throughout the season, and we've kind of piggybacked on the same kind of idea, so, you know, we're kind of putting together a video for that and all of that. But I think to echo some of Boyce's points, you got to, you know, get people there and all of that. And most importantly, it's been when I took it over, there wasn't really an active board. And I will say, James, and a shout out to Corey Gregory, who is no doubt listening and will be watching. Without these two guys, and also my wife, Mrs. VP, who I've fully converted into a soccer fan, who did not watch soccer when we got together. You know, it soon becomes something that is bigger than just one person. And James has established our cap contest, which has got, you know, people, you know, fill in the bar seats for 6:30 matches against, Brighton, you know, or Huddersfield last weekend. And then, you know, you have Corey Gregory, who has kind of taken the helm on all of our merchandise and all of our, you know, financial stuff and things like that. So I've been very, very lucky to run into these people who have, you know, become some very, very good friends of mine, and to help kind of to help run this thing.
And you guys both touched on one of the biggest challenges is just getting people out. What are some tactics that you use? Is it calling them? Is it, you know, so how do you actually physically get them there?
Oh man, guilt.
Yeah.
Guilt is a big motivational factor in terms of trying to get people there. You know, don't leave me by myself. But yeah, no, the charitable component thing was nice. As Jared kind of referenced, we give $1 out of every schooner that we sell at Johnny's to Hope House, which is a domestic violence entity a little bit outside of Kansas City. But no, I mean, Jared touched on like a cap contest. We haven't done anything like that yet, but really,
what does that mean? So I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Like I assume it's like a U.S. cap contest, right? Like a national team thing where the number of appearances.
James can explain. This is his brainchild too.
Yeah, so I actually have a sheet right here. Not that I planned this at all, but yeah. So every one, I hope you can see that. Every game that we have people sign in, and basically we ask question, like obviously this one was least favorite Liverpool player, and then their favorite beer from the bar, and then we'll give this information to the bar about what beers are doing well, and then just humor ourselves. We'll get information about, you know, player likes, dislikes, and all that. But the main prize is obviously they sign in every time. Then the 3 people who have come the most times will get prizes from the bar. They'll get gift cards. This is the first time we're doing it, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out at the end of it. But positive up to this point. So.
All right.
One of the big things that we've done, though, as far as the 2 supporters groups that I'm a big fan of. So for the North London Derby, we do a home and home.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever Arsenal hosts, Casey Gooners host us at their bar, Johnny's. It's called the Power and Light District here in Kansas City. And we take one side of the bar and the other, and we chant and scream and sing at one another. And then when Spurs host, everyone comes down to Strange Days Brewing. And it is definitely a middle school dance, guys and girls on either side. And I tell you what, you know, it was something that this stuff was really coming together when last year it was Strange Days Brewery they were just opening. And Boyce and I kind of talked about doing this, and it was big questions like, you know what? The Arsenal group was a little more established than we were. They're going to come away from Johnny's. I get it. I'm taking a game away from Johnny's. Of course, it was one of those ungodly 6:30 a.m. kickoffs. And Boyce was, wonderful enough to convince his crowd that, yes, this is a thing. This would be great. And I tell you what, it was an absolute blast. I got on a table to kind of toast our hosts and all of that. And it was just a sea of red and then blue and white. And it was some of the most fun, and those are our NLD watches are some of my favorites.
Agreed.
I was gonna say I think this is a good time to talk about our dream, Jared. Can we talk about it? Which is the fact that in the middle of the Power and Light District,
here we go.
There is an area called the living room, which is just this big outdoor area. But over the last few years, they've updated the screen to be like a 16:9 big HD television in the middle of it. And our goal, since we started this, if they would stop giving us 6:30 a.m. kickoffs, is to try and bisect it down the middle and then just go Arsenal on one side, Tottenham on the other side, and try and get the largest NLD watch party in America out there and try and get everybody into soccer and everybody out there doing it. But we cannot get it because it keeps being at 6:30 in the morning, and we probably have to negotiate with Cordish. But dreams.
If only we had a couple of lawyers to figure that out.
It's true. It's true. We might actually have to make that happen. No, it's been a blast. Like, it's really nice to be able to go over there and be able to share that experience. And NBC Sports Soccer and the event that you're watching, you should also come to Kansas City at some point. Have you not seen the World Cup crowd that we had back when the last time the U.S. was actually in it?
Absolutely. No, that's really cool to hear. And it sounds like it's pretty good natured, and there's, obviously your rival teams and all that, but it sounds like the event is incredible. So that's really cool to hear. And, hopefully sometime next year, we'll be watching on NBC Sports. So I want to talk. Yeah, I want to talk more about the podcast, because I absolutely love your podcast. It's such a unique take on podcasts. It's something very different than what I've listened to in the past. Anyone who's watching this or listening from our podcast, definitely, if you haven't, go download Who Kicked the Corner Flag. It's really cool. James, why don't you tell people, a little bit more about it? You touched on it a little bit more, but can you describe, what it is?
Yeah, so it's a very similar format week by week. We'll start off with a little segment, which is Question of the Match, where we'll talk about 3 specific fixtures over the weekend, and I'll give each of the guys statistical questions from that game, just to kind of get the points rolling. That then kind of gets the discussion going about certain aspects of said games. After that, we'll touch on Rumor Mill, which is their favorite game, of course, where I'll pull out some rumors from different tabloids from that week, different lines that actually have been written either online or printed. And I'll throw them at the guys and see if they can get it, see if they think it's actually true or something that I just made up. And like Jared said, I do trick them quite a bit. But anyway, so that's Rumor Mill. And then we'll finish usually with a game called Player Profile, which is where I'll read 5 different clues to a current Premier League player. And again, the guys have to kind of buzz in, if you like, or say their name to be the first one as soon as they know the player. We tally the points at the end of each episode, and then we have a running season total, which Boyce, I believe, still has by 3 points. Yeah, it's 10 to Boyce, 8 to Jared, and 6 to Guest. Still lots to play for, but it's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's more about, obviously getting some banter going between these two guys, obviously testing the knowledge. People kind of love to kind of test their own knowledge on some of these questions, and obviously hearing what these guys have to say about the fixtures. And we always do a North London derby special too, where it's just focused on that game and stats around, obviously, Arsenal Spurs. So that's pretty much how we set it up. And like I said, it's a week-to-week format, and yeah, it's all times.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so you touched on wanting to stick out as being different than other Spurs podcasts, and that was kind of the inspiration. Was there anything else from either a television or podcast perspective that you used as inspiration, for creating kind of the game show concept?
There was actually one TV show back in England. I don't know if either of these guys have heard of it. It's a TV show called 8 out of 10 Cats. It's a very bizarre TV show, but it's set up in the same way. It's a quiz show with statistics.
Catchy name. Oh,
8 out of 10. Google it or YouTube it.
Surprisingly, I have not borne witness to that show.
Yeah, and it's not about cats. It's just a line. 8 out of 10 cats. Yeah, seriously, look it up. It's a show that has all these guests on, and they talk about the latest things that have happened in the world, like big news items, whatever. And then they'll do quizzes about these events and all that. So in a way, I drew some inspiration from that because I wanted something like that to kind of be put into a Premier League realm. So it was talking about the weekend fixtures, getting their thoughts on the games, but kind of testing their knowledge on how much they know about the specifics of that game.
And how has the show evolved? So you're coming towards the end of your second season. Has it always been those segments? Has it always been kind of the 3 or 4 segments? Has it always been those questions, or has it changed at all from your first episode till now?
Yeah, I think we've kind of tested the waters a little bit with a few games. We had one way back called Extra Time, which was a fun game where they had 60 seconds to kind of talk about a topic without kind of stalling. But, you know, we do a lot of our recording.
Extra Time.
It was
so hard.
Jared and I sitting there trying to listen to whether or not we said "and" twice.
No.
Yeah, so there's the
rule.
feedback.
It was like you had to say you had 60 seconds
Yep.
to talk about a match or a topic, but not repeat the same word twice.
Right. That was basically, it was, yeah.
It was a lot of talk like this. Because eventually Boyce, I would just like challenge, like, well, what was the word? Oh, the word was "and." Like, okay.
Yeah. It was funny because we were always relying on James. I'm like, challenge. I'm just going to wait. And James is going to be like, yeah, he definitely said "and" twice. Excellent. I mean, you're just like sitting there waiting on conjunctions the entire time going, yeah, the connective tissue.
Fun, but God, it was so hard.
So that game will come back soon.
I'll just walk away.
But anyway, yeah, to answer your question, there are a few games we've kind of been mixing around with a little bit, but I think honestly we found a good formula now with the 3 that we have. It's a good structure. It kind of, like I said, allows us to talk about the games at the beginning and then kind of towards the end, just kind of have a straight full-on quiz. So that's kind of how it's set up, and I think, you know, we're digging it, we're enjoying it, and it's always a good time.
And where does the name come from? Who kicked the corner flag?
Well,
no one knows.
No, yeah, I don't even know. No, originally we were going to be called Yellow Cards, but I soon found out that there was another podcast of that exact name, and so I had to kind of think quickly because I wanted to kind of time out a launch. And so I was thinking, right, quiz show. You know, we want questions. We want to have something kind of whimsical. And then I thought, well, what is something that's kind of bizarre that happens on a soccer field? Guys, every so often, they like to kick the corner flags. You know, they get mad, they get frustrated. And so I thought, hey, that's kind of catchy. That's kind of fun. And so thus it was born, Who Kicked the Corner Flag. And when I first started, obviously, updating the episodes, I had to find little screenshots of said players kicking corner flags. And let me tell you, that was really hard. There's not many out there. So since then, I've changed it. But yeah, that's kind of where the name came from.
All right, interesting. Yeah, it's very catchy. It's very different, and it sort of grabs your attention just from being kind of different than the usual sort of podcast names. So again, very, very cool. The podcast I describe, it's very fast paced. You do a fantastic job of being very informative and humorous and just entertaining overall. Is that something that you consciously you guys set out to do, or do your personalities? I mean, just in talking with you, this is the first time. Well, I guess this is technically the second time that we're speaking. But I mean, you guys are incredibly personable. Is that just natural, or is that something you guys like said, oh, we want it to be kind of like this?
I mean, I think it comes pretty naturally, to be honest, because I think if we sat down individually and Jared and I were like, let's be funny in this particular way, I don't really think it would necessarily work in the same way that it does. It's just an interaction that he and I have developed over the last kind of 7 years that just facilitates itself through, you know, if it's not Arsenal versus Spurs, it's Kansas versus Missouri. I don't know. Jared and I would probably like pick NBA teams and just be on polar opposites of the spectrums just so that we could bitch at one another throughout the day. We also have a very excellent
just
group.
Makes it fun.
Yeah, I was going to say we have an excellent group text that also is filled with soccer punditry throughout the day, like me yelling at Troy Deeney today, which was glorious.
Screenshotted.
So I will say, with James's background as, you know, in, you know, kind of writing and acting and all that, James is a tremendous storyteller, and that is readily apparent in our podcast, where he just drives that story along. You know, he simultaneously allows you know, Boyce and I to banter while contributing to banter, while then, just as you pointed on, moving us to the next topic and going on swiftly. And as a contributor, you really appreciate that. And I know, kind of being moved along for Boyce and I also, as you know, history of we're two trial lawyers, so that I think also helps with a bit of, you know, just the kind of, there's never any want for well, I'll ask James this, there's never any air in the conversation when it comes to editing this and all of that. And often James will actually say, you know, James will do the sign off and all of that, and you know James will give us notes. It's like, hey guys, this sounded great and all that stuff. And then invariably, Boyce and I will just continue pecking at one another. Where James goes, "Hang on, I got to record this again. No, I got to turn it back on." So
yeah, I think I was gonna say I think the only thing he's had to edit is that I can never get Sadio Mane and Leroy Sané right, and probably never will in my entire life. I don't know how many times I've made that mistake over the last 2 years, but it's numerous.
I actually can't tell now if you're doing it on purpose anymore, which is really funny now.
Oh, that is fantastic. And yeah, like, I mean, the episodes are about 30 minutes long each podcast. And, you know, for those who maybe haven't heard, it's not just straight trivia and answer, or just question and answer. You guys then sprinkle in your analysis of the games, and it's always like really informative stuff and really from kind of an analyst perspective. And you do such a good job of informing people, but also keeping things entertained. So I can't recommend it highly enough. So great job, guys. From right now, you're solely focused on the Premier League. Do you guys have any plans or anything like that to try to cover other leagues or in the future? Or are you guys you happy with the Prem?
I think right now we're doing the Premier League. We do the occasional FA Cup special, and we did actually do a Champions League special not so long ago. So we might do more of those. Whether we branch out into the MLS, possibly. I'm thinking maybe more the teams like the Italian League, the Spanish League, maybe at some point. But I think it's kind of one step at a time. We don't want to kind of do too much all at once. We're getting great feedback from the Premier League stuff. So we'll kind of see how it goes. But that's never say never, so to speak.
I was going to say, I think the nice thing is that it's all in our wheelhouse. Is, you know, there's never research that's necessarily required because we're all just doing it anyway of our own volition. So it makes the research that goes into it or anything along those lines a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That all makes sense. Do you guys follow any other leagues? Obviously, you're huge Premier League fans. Do you follow any teams in whether it's MLS, La Liga, Serie A? Boyce, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty big sporting Kansas City fans. We had season tickets for a while and just it didn't end up going to all the matches, so we got a kind of sporadic throughout the year. I haven't really picked a La Liga team. I had a great time when I was I watched AS Roma versus Juventus when I was in Rome in 2015. The Stadio Olimpico was pretty incredible. Yeah, I mean, not really a vested interest in it. It's hard because I think La Liga is only available on BN right now, and our cable subscriber doesn't even have it. So ESPN Plus, I think, is an interesting venture just because it has Italian Serie A on it all day long. I think at some point, just to spite Cristiano Ronaldo, I might pick a team in opposition to Juventus just to hope that they go down, even though I will still love Aaron Ramsey post-departure.
So I'm a Roma fan, Boyce. So based on that analysis, you would then have to be a Lazio fan, just to let you know.
I feel like you've got a much better background in this than I do. This is why we can't expand into Serie A, is that I'm just like, I don't like Cristiano Ronaldo, so I will pick a team that is in opposition to him, and that's it. That's my only strategy.
So, Jared, you're AS Roma fan?
So my folks lived over there for a little bit, and Boyce is 100% right. Stadio Olimpico is absolutely amazing. And you see and Rome is about probably 80-20, Roma-Lazio, when it comes right down to it. And I think Francesco Totti probably has a lot to do with that, especially with our generation kind of coming up. I mean, he was it as far as Italian soccer went. Weird little ties. So that my mother was actually born in Stuttgart, so VfB Stuttgart. And also if you're a fan of Porsche, sure, why not? So I loosely follow and kind of at least try to keep up and see what's going on some of the other leagues. But to Boyce's point, I mean, the three of us are watching almost every Premier League match that's available every weekend and all of that. So it's really just, like you said, of our own volition and aware of the trends and the transfer markets and things like that on it, to switch over and to carry that on for another league and another league. I think it'd be easier, it'd be more natural for it from an MLS standpoint. 100% right. We're all big sporting fans and just sitting in awe of teams like Monterrey, who made short work of Sporting in the CONCACAF Champions League the past 2 weeks.
I haven't seen an aggregate defeat that bad since Arsenal played Bayern Munich.
That
hurt.
It was tough. I paid attention for about the first 20 minutes of the first leg. I was like, you know what? No, we're good. We're done. Gave up my ticket to the second leg. I admit that makes me a bad fan. That's fine. But who knows? I love the specials that James puts together, and actually, we're toying around with with the next FA Cup round of picking a lower level FA Cup team and having that be our team to carry through and to then report on the status of Tranmere Rovers. Yes, this is what we're going to do. So I'm very excited for that.
I got Stevenage.
I was going to say, I look very much forward to the player profile MLS version where it's just silence between Jared and I for 30 seconds as James reads off clues of some unknown member of the 18 in NYCFC. We're just like,
he's Scottish.
His name is Alex. And we're like, I don't know.
All right. That is fantastic. James, what about you? Any other teams you support?
Honestly, no. And what's funny is too, these guys are probably going to be much bigger SKC fans than I am because I don't follow the MLS as much as I probably should. Interesting story, actually. I work as a personal trainer in a gym, and the Monterey players actually came into our gym on Friday morning, and I was kind of sitting behind a chair, typing in all their names and looking at their values like a weird person. But no, it was quite surreal. I'm thinking, how did they beat them 10-2? Anyway, but yeah, honestly, to answer your question, I'm not a huge Sporting Kansas City fan. I watch it kind of here and there, but see, do well, I'll be cheering them on, sure.
All right, fair enough. In all honesty, so I'm a Philadelphia Union supporter, and you guys have given us some tough losses over the years. So I can't say SKC is my favorite team, but I respect the hell out of you guys and what Vermees has built down there. So I watched the entire first leg, and it was rough. From a Monterey perspective. So, but you guys will bounce back. I think you're still top 3 in the West, most talented teams, and you'll make some noise in the playoffs. Before I get to my final question, is there anything that I didn't ask that you guys wanted to talk about?
Gosh, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of things there, actually. Yeah, I think obviously, like I said, we'll keep doing our episodes week in, week out. We're actually going to be doing our first off-season special where we have like an FA Cup tournament, if you like, where we're going to get 8 different podcasters, including these 2 guys, to kind of go head to head. And I'm going to do a live drawing to see who gets to play with who. And then obviously winner moves forward, loser goes home until we have one person left. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously good to test the knowledge from across the podcasting spectrum, so to speak. So yeah, we're going to try that and see how it goes.
I'm very, very much looking forward to Jared and I both going out in the first round.
It just means more beer for you and me to drink.
It's true. We'll just sit back and watch the rest of it.
Before I ask my final question, so Jared and James have pretty normal Twitter handles. Boyce, your Twitter handle, it's like Samurai. What? Can you give me the backstory on your Twitter handle name?
Yeah, so I did my last semester of law school in Tokyo back in 2008 and have been to Japan twice, but for a pretty extended period of time, almost totaling 7 or 8 months. And then I went to the University of Kansas for undergrad. So they are the Jayhawks. So thus a melding of those 2 things becomes Samurai Hawk. And the only reason it's not the same on Instagram is that there is some dude named Sammy Hawk who had that handle before I could get to it, which is one of the singularly most ridiculous things I've encountered.
All right. Well,
I've known
cool.
Boyce for 7 years. I have never asked that question as to what the hell that means. I was like, it's something Boise. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
There you go. Origin story. There you go.
All right, so there you go. Happy you at least learned something today. So we always love to leave this on a positive note. We ask this of all our guests. So what's the thing you're most excited about happening in your soccer world? You can take it any direction you want, from a fandom perspective, from your podcast perspective. What's the thing you're most excited about? Jared, why don't we start with you?
1 and 1A. I think I'm very excited with this podcast, kind of the evolution of it. James has done an amazing job, presenting the kind of new formats and things like that, and excited to kind of work this into, our continual updates and evolution to our 3rd season. And it's a blast. I love it, and I learned something week in and week out about the Prem. And then secondly, it's for our club, that brand new shiny stadium that we finally got to move into, that so far still has the luster on it, but hopefully it does not open with a Europa League match, as Boyce has continuously referenced. But kind of excited to see how that kind of builds, and how the team can kind of enter that realm of world market transfers and things like that. We're going to see if they're going to take the next step, not only in a business sense, but also in the physical stadium sense. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Boyce, what's the thing you're most excited about happening?
So I'm going to take the Jared route here and bifurcate this a little bit. But when it comes to who kicked the corner flag, I'm most excited to beat Jared for the second season like I did in the first season. And then when it comes to KC Gooners, it's unfortunate that the Europa League finals on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. because it doesn't afford the same opportunity for attendance that we had during the FA Cup finals in 2014, 15, and 17. But I'm pretty excited about that. And then above and beyond that, as with everything, I mean, Jared kind of touched on it earlier, but it's definitely been true for me and KC Gooners. With every match, every new person that shows up, it's been an opportunity to make new friends and establish some of the best friendships that I've had in my life, both in Kansas City, Missouri, and in London as well. So it's one of the things that I perpetually look forward to. Whenever we rope somebody else into this ridiculous club that we've got that drinks at 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday, it's always just a great opportunity to be able to meet other people and kind of a general nice shared experience in the middle of the shambles disaster that is 2019. So as you know, weird and sine wavy as fandom can be, when you're in the top four, you're out of the top four, things are good, things are bad. It's always something to fall back on in a group of people that you have a shared experience with. And there's a lot of value in that, I think.
Very cool. James, what's the thing you're most excited about happening in your soccer world?
Ditto with a lot of what they said, honestly. I think, as an Englishman in Kansas City, the fear was that I was never going to be able to watch another Premier League game again, because you just don't think, especially in a place like Kansas City, it's going to be that, prevalent. But having NBCSN pick it up the year that I moved back here was pretty epic, for one. And obviously discovering the supporter groups, obviously meeting up with Jared when I did, and just kind of obviously then meeting with Boyce and creating said podcast. I mean, it's honestly, I could have never imagined it going this way. I think it's just been such a wonderful ride, and not to sound too cheesy, but long may it continue. I think we've built such a great thing here, and obviously with the supporter groups as well, the things that we do there. And I just hope too that the growth of soccer in Kansas City continues to grow, because we have a very exciting game in July with Bayern Munich against AC Milan, which is going to be the first of its nature in Arrowhead Stadium, which is where the Chiefs play. If that goes well, which I'm sure it will, that might even pave the way for a World Cup nod, so to speak, where in 2026 we get a game or two there. So, exciting things are happening, and that's great to see. And like I said, long may it continue.
Absolutely. It's awesome stuff to hear. This has been so much fun. I look forward to listening to your episodes and continuing to watch you guys, grow the podcast and everything. Again, we have everyone's Twitter accounts, as well as the Who Kicked the Corner Flag Twitter account, linked in the video description and podcast show notes. For anyone who's just listening, Boyce, can you tell people where to find you online?
Yeah, on Twitter, I am at Samurai Hawk, as we discussed. On Instagram, at Samurai Hawk KU. And then KC Gooners can be found at KC Gooners on Twitter and Instagram. And I think we're available on Facebook as well, but who uses that anymore anyway?
Very true. James, how about you?
Man, I wasn't ready for this question. Twitter is James John Rose is the personal one. Obviously, I run the Kick Corner Flag, at Kick Corner Flag Twitter as well. Instagram, I'm getting better at. Have been a little rusty there, honestly, but it's building. That's at Kick Corner Flag as well. And I do use Facebook every now and again. That is at Kick Corner Flag, facebook.com/. So yeah, that's me.
All right, Jared.
And I'm at, as you've noted, pretty obvious Twitter handle, Jared Bustamante. I think I've tweeted 4 times. James, is that how many times I've done?
I think it's a record. Yeah.
I do say I'm an infrequent tweeter. I am and we are at KC Spurs at Twitter, which is far more active Twitter handle. My wife and I run it, and anything that you've chuckled at or is clever at all is 100% her doing. At Instagram, Bustamopolis. Good luck spelling it. I'm probably on there somewhere. But again, give us a shout.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, we'll add the supporters groups to the video description, podcast show notes as well. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
This was a blast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Anyone who is watching the YouTube video, thanks for being here. If you're looking for the podcast, it'll be out on Thursday. And yeah, everyone have a great night. See ya.